end zone. Underthrown, McCollum, touchdown. Trey Tucker to the end zone it goes. Caught! Touchdown, Armand Benz.
Bearcat Blitz time on the Believe Network, midway through the 2024 college football season and just days away from, well, not days, a couple weeks away from the upcoming college basketball season. Was hoping to have the AP Top 25 poll landing before we had the recording set for this episode, but not to be. It might actually drop in the middle of our recording time right now. This typically come from the AP right between when Neil and I typically do these recordings in the mornings. But if we do not get it, we'll just touch on some other projections at the end of the show for Cincinnati basketball to close things out with a couple weeks away from the start of the season. But we're in the thick of football season where the Bearcats and Brendan Sorsby, but not really highlighted by Brendan Sorsby in this win, 19-13 over UCF. They won via the defense, really for the first time all season that you could put the main winning formula behind the defense. In this one, we'll touch on that on both sides of the ball to start the show and go from there into the basketball realm of things. He's Neil Meyer. I'm Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, and you can find Neil at frontofficenews.com, part of the Cincinnati Rivals Network. Before we get to all that, though, on this week's show, I want to tell you about Bet Online, our fantastic presenting sponsor, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads are available to bet on during the games, with the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. And Neil will start. Usually we start on the offensive side of the ball, looking at things from that perspective to recap these Bearcats football games. Not this week, though. The defense gets their flowers, and they get to go first here as they hold UCF to just 13 total points, two different quarterbacks, none of which named KJ Jefferson the starter throughout the season so far in 2024. He was benched for freshman 17-year-old EJ Colson. He only got 4 passes in before he got the yank and was replaced by Ja'Curry Brown. All in all, they passed for just 201 total yards, Neil. They were held to under 5 yards per carry and 196 total rushing yards on 40 attempts. So, man, UC's defense did a wonderful job in this game. The run defense was on point, the best run defense we've seen for 60 minutes in a football game this year from UC. Dante Corleone was all over the field. Jake Golday was all over the field. He did exactly what he said his unit was going to do in our midweek interview with him over on Talking Cats with Russ Heltman. They wrapped, they tackled. They did not let RJ Harvey force close to 10 missed tackles, which is what he's been doing lately on his own, let alone the entire backfield. So all in all, Neil, this was a great win, a great showing from the defense. They forced multiple turnovers, and they hold up their end of the bargain in a day where the offense gave up turnovers themselves. And it was definitely, I mean, you could say pretty definitively the worst game that Brendan Sorsby has played thus far. But we'll save that for the offensive side. Defense was fantastic in this one.
Yeah, no kidding. The defense was phenomenal on Saturday down there in Orlando. Unfortunately, for those who followed along, was supposed to be there, had some flight delays, flight issues, so covered the game from home. But Dante Corleone, Jared Bartlett, Jake Golday, the key players there on Saturday for the Bearcats defensive side of things. It's worth noting, Russ.
Antoine Peak as well. He was fantastic in the run game.
Was fantastic there at the star position. 7 tackles for him. But, Russ, you mentioned your conversation in your midweek interview with Jake Golday. Jared Bartlett said the same thing to me.
We picked some great guys to interview midweek, Neil. They were 2 of the 3 or 4 best performers in the entire game.
Yeah, and Jared Bartlett even noted that it was going to be a game where they had to have all hats around the ball. Anybody and everybody around RJ Harvey. I mean, he outside of the one big carry, Russ, for 31 yards on the opening drive, anytime you can hold RJ Harvey to 17 carries for 94 yards, but one of those runs going for 31. So 16 carries for 60 yards. I mean, you look at those numbers and you're in great hands for the defense. But, man, Jared Bartlett, Dante Corleone was fantastic this weekend. I mean, you look at the stats, Jared Bartlett just stuffed the stat sheets, Russ. 7 total tackles, 5 in which were solo tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackle for loss, and a forced fumble, and what arguably could have been a fumble recovery at one point in this game as well. Jared Bartlett told me it was a non-negotiable to pursuit to the ball and try to make those plays. And he even noted once those opportunities come, they will turn into the points. However, they didn't turn into as many points as the Bearcats would have liked on Saturday. But, man, seeing that kind of number from Jared Bartlett was fantastic. Dante Corleone, Russ, continued to prove why he is a first-round NFL draft prospect. I mean, he was just fantastic on Saturday.
First multi-sack game of the year, I think.
Yes, first multi-sack game of the year. That looked like 2022 Dante Corleone. For people who were wondering, you wouldn't have even been able to tell he had the health scare this offseason with how well he played on Saturday. Because, man, he was fantastic up there in the trenches. I thought Dante had his best game of the season. Jared Bartlett had his, but Jake Golday comes away with the big forced fumble as well there on the opening drive. But, man, Russ, it was a different game than what we anticipated, especially for UCF's offense, because we're going in all week. We're hearing kind of rumblings of no KJ Jefferson, but then they make the change to EJ Colson, who only goes 2 drives. Ja'Curry Brown comes in. I thought Ja'Curry Brown played all right. I didn't think he played stellar or underperformed, but overall, this UCF
just didn't elevate. He didn't really elevate.
Didn't elevate what Gus Malzahn was looking for. But, man, if you're looking at this Cincinnati defense right now, that was the time they needed to have the performance they did. Antoine Peak anchored the secondary. I thought him and Josh Minkins were fantastic. But overall, a solid defensive effort from Cincinnati, especially anytime you can hold UCF for us to under 200 yards on the ground. I mean, they entered this contest nearly 300 yards rushing. You only hold them to 197 on 40 attempts. That's a great stat for Tyson Veit in this defense, and it's only going to get better. Obviously, heading into a good Arizona State this weekend, I'm very happy that defensive showing came at the time it did off the bye week.
Arizona State, a team that's already eclipsed its 4.5 game win total entering the season. They're right, Neil. They're 5-1 right now.
5-1, right?
Yep, close to the top of the Big 12 standings. Those Big 12 standings do not look like those preseason projections thought they would, Neil. And that just goes to show you how tightly condensed this league is, and anybody can win week to week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was actually looking at my preseason ballot myself earlier, and I was like, oh, this is not what I had projected there for my preseason media ballot. And I was like, oh, this is a little shocking. But overall, it's a great start for Cincinnati, and hopefully they can continue this momentum, because obviously you have another good, high-powered offense in Arizona State coming to Cincinnati this weekend. But overall, if defense plays like that and the offense can tune some things up, it's going to be a great showing at Nippert Stadium on Saturday.
Looking at the Big 12 right now, we got BYU at the top, Iowa State up there as well at 3-0, and Texas Tech at 3-0 as well. Yeah, Iowa State. I think, Neil, they're 6-0. I think for the first time in like 50 or 60 years. It was some kind of crazy amount of time that it's been since Iowa State is 6-0. And another wrinkle in the top 25 is the Army and Navy ranked for the first time in the same poll since 1960. So some little nuggets outside of UC land right there. But rest of the standings down to UC is you got Texas Tech, Iowa State, BYU at 3-0 in conference, BYU, Iowa State 6-0 overall, Texas Tech 5-1, Kansas State 2-1 in conference, they're at 5-1 overall, and Arizona State, the biggest surprise in the entire league so far, probably right there with Cincinnati as a big surprise. They're 2-1 in conference, 5-1 overall. Cincinnati 2-1 in conference, 4-2 overall. Neil, with those two losses by a combined 4 points.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I would say the biggest shock, Russ, is BYU there, up there at 6-0. I think.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the biggest shock.
Personally, I will right my wrongs on my preseason ballot because I put them 15th. So,
overall, and how about I'm getting a kick out of the Jake Retzloff. He's a Jewish quarterback, one of the few Jewish quarterbacks in the country, and they're just jumping onto the BYU tagline. It's perfect. It can't go any better right there. I love Jake Retzloff. I saw him posing with a fan with the BYU shirt after, I think it was either after this game or the last week's game. It's a lot of fun stuff, a lot of fun undercurrents and under storylines in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, overall, the Big 12's cooking right now. And Russ, I think I was looking at some key individual notes from the conference this week as well. You look down, 3 of the top 5 rushers nationally in yards per game come from Big 12. Cincinnati faces one of them in Cam Scattlebo this week. 5 of the top 10 Power 4 teams in rushing yards per game come from the Big 12. 6 quarterbacks rank in the top 20 nationally in passing yards. Brendan Sorsby among one of those 6. So overall, there's a lot to pick away from here in the Big 12. And obviously, Big 12 running backs have rushed for 175 yards or more in 6 games this season, which equals the other 4 power conferences combined. So you look at that, and that's another crazy statistic of the Big 12. There's a lot of nuggets here in the Big 12 this week, and it's going to be interesting to really keep an eye on how this conference develops in the back half of the season.
Yeah, we won't be taking too much of a look at the betting line for Arizona State today. We'll focus on that on Thursday in full force with basketball obviously starting to get more and more of a microscope on it with the season approaching. But to close out the defensive talk here, Neil, just looking at the PFF grades, headlined by Antoine Peak Jr., he makes the national team of the week for PFF, actually. He was their safety on that national team of the week, earns an 86.9 overall grade. I believe I saw him close to 95, 96 in run defense. Nasty performance from Antoine Peak Jr. in run defense and overall at 86.9. And the rest of the top 5 on defense, Jared Bartlett at 84.6 overall, Jake Golday, our 2 guys we interviewed this week, at 83.9. Harris Adams, shout out Harris Adams, man. He has played really strong ball as the second rotational piece behind Dante Corleone. They needed him even more this week, Neil. I think probably got a little bit more of a heavier snap diet than he's usually accustomed to. I think between 20 and 25 snaps this week against UCF. Performed really well, had a 73.9 overall grade. He has been another one of those great transfers to go with to go with Jake Golday and Jared Bartlett, who I just mentioned right there. To round out the top 5, Dante Corleone at 71.8 overall. 3 of the top 5 players transfers into this program, Neil. Just goes to show the recruiting classes aren't necessarily where fans want them to be right now, but the ability to identify talent and underlooked talent and maybe underdeveloped talent, it's pretty clear, Neil, and we're seeing it especially on defense and offense. Really, all of the main contributors on both sides of the ball, for the most part, have been transfers that this staff and the recruiting staff in particular have identified.
Yeah, most certainly. The defensive aspect of the transfers, Russ, you look at this, Cincinnati's defense is contributing 6 or 7 guys who are from the transfer portal this offseason. Jake Golday's been a huge impact. Antoine Peak has been around. He's been an impact there. But Josh Minkin's there in the secondary as well. This is a huge part of the defense, and that's been the transfer portal. Harris Adams is starting to see his snaps contribute a little bit more. But overall, this defense, this whole secondary basically were members of the transfer portal, and overall, they are starting to trend in the right direction. And Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield have been able to lock in and identify the kind of talent and identify the kind of players that they are wanting to build into this defense under Tyson Fight. And it looks to be as advertised so far through the first few weeks of this season. They are identifying their guys. They're bringing in the right people who fit the culture and the program, but they have been spot on with what they are trying to do there in the transfer portal this offseason.
Closing up shop on the defense here. We'll get to a break in just a moment, get to the offensive side of the ball. But overall in this season, Neil, Antoine Peak Jr. takes the top spot now after that performance in terms of overall defensive grades this season. And then you go down the line, the top 10, Derek Canteen, transfer. Number 3, Golday, transfer. Dante Corleone, homegrown. Number 5, Jordan Robinson, transfer. Number 6, Harris Adams, transfer. Number 7, Jordan Young, transfer. Number 8, Kai Stokes, transfer. Number 9, Josh Minkins, transfer. And number 10, Cam Rutherford, transfer And Jared Bartlett, number 11, transfer. Those top 11 guys, 9 of the top 11, Neil, are transfer players that this staff has identified over the last couple cycles and brought in and developed and worked into this system very, very well. Just Antoine Peak Jr. and Dante Corleone, homegrown talents there. And Antoine Peak Jr., a guy that they have developed from a walk-on player to a scholarship player to a guy that's now the top-graded PFF defensive player on this defense right now after what he did against UCF. We'll get to a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz, and then we'll get back to the other side of the ball. A little bit less cheery recap on offense from the 19-point performance out of Brendan Sorsby and company right here on Bearcat Blitz, presented by Bet Online. The offense, want to tell everybody about Cherry Bundy. They're a natural cherry tart juice supplemental beverage that is great for after workouts. Got one in my hand right now. Cherry Bundy. It's a tart cherry juice.
Got one myself.
And in particular, the 8-ounce bottle, which is kind of their normal go-to supplement size. 60 tart cherries in every one of these bottles. It's proven to soreness after a workout, increase your recovery time, or increase your recovery speed, I should sleep. There's naturally occurring melatonin in Cherry Bundy drinks to help you improve sleep, and it also helps support immunity, and they're trusted by the best of the best. Cincinnati Bearcats, trusted by those athletic outfits. The football team uses it. The basketball team uses it. I know Neil sent me a picture of head performance coach Michael Rayfeld having that as part of his arsenal of post-practice recovery items for the full team in Chicago this past weekend. So Bearcats are using it. You should be using it as well. You can get Cherry Bundy wherever you get your kind of retail products, whether that be Publix and Kroger, available there. That's available on Amazon to buy in bulk. You can also buy and become a part of their subscription program on cherrybundy.com. That's CHRIBUDI.com. Once again, cherrybundy.com. Just look up Cherry Bundy and you will be able to find it pretty easily. Trusted by 66 of the 67 Power 4 conference football teams and used by every NCAA football and basketball national champion since 2007. Natural products and ingredients with no added sugar. Check out Cherry Bundy today. They are so good. I mean, Neil, I've been really taking a nice liking to these. I'm going to drink one after my workout today, working it into my routine. And it's just a night. You actually sent me the picture of the Cherry Bundy on the post-practice items table. And I was drinking a Cherry Bundy when you sent me that. It was just perfect timing. So it's a great product, and we love having them as part of the team. And speaking of teams, let's get back to the offensive side of the ball from this 19-13 win by Cincinnati over UCF. The UCF team that outgained the Bearcats 397 to 338. Brendan Sorsby had his lowest passer rating of his season so far at UC, 117.2 overall through 2 interceptions. 2 picks, Neil, that were honestly, to my view, his fault. Some questionable decisions on those passes. They were only able to create 3 points off of 2 turnovers forced by their defense, and they only ran the ball for 3 yards per carry. But in the end, they got enough out of the kicking game. They got enough out of the punting game, the other phase of the football, where Mason Fletcher was unbelievable in this one. He pinned UCF deep inside their own 5-yard line late in the game to really help flip the field and help flip a victory more towards Cincinnati's chances. All in all, not the performance you see again out of this offense, Neil, but they did enough to complement the defense and the special teams, and it was enough to get the win. Not always going to be pretty, but it was good to see overall this team get a victory on a day where their quarterback didn't play like a top 15 player at the position, which is something he's done consistently for most of the season.
Yeah, no, most certainly. I think I'm right there with you. I think Brendan Sorsby had arguably probably his worst game of the season.
I'd say so. If he would have thrown 1 pick, I'd say maybe Miami was a little bit shakier, but the second interception, seals it.
But despite finishing 25 for 38, 241 yards in the touchdown, he also had the keeper on the ground as well for the touchdown. Overall, I thought it was just a little bit antsy. Obviously, UCF's defense was kind of bringing a little bit of pressure, but the one interception off the hands of Joe Royer, you got to lead that ball out there. If you lead that ball, that's probably maybe a touchdown there instead of the deflection. But overall, it was a game where the offense left points on the board. Now, Russ, it was great to see Corey Kiner out there running hard after leaving the Texas Tech game with the injury. It was great to see that. I mean, he bulldozed former teammate Deshaun Pace and then hit the Joker celebration. So you have to note that as well, which was something Corey doesn't really celebrate like that. So overall, to kind of see that, you knew he had to spark his momentum back, but he finished with 17 carries for 83 yards. So that's a good sight to see. Obviously, you like to see the amount of carries, but you're used to seeing him kind of over that 100 yards game. But Russ, the person that really stood out to me on the offensive side, let's talk about it. Tony Johnson has been coming into his
about
role.
To bring him up if you didn't, Neil, for sure.
It's coming into his role as of late there. Obviously, the slot position has kind of been banged up for Cincinnati. No Aaron Turner, no Tyron Smith again for this one. And it kind of has been a weary situation with Aaron Turner. We're still trying to figure everything out there about what could go on for him with the rest of the season. But Tyron Smith was still out in this one. And then on top of it, Tony Johnson has stepped in and filled that void hugely and has become a very, very common target for Brendan Sorsby. 8 catches on 10 targets, 76 yards and a touchdown, which were all season highs for Tony Johnson as well. So that's a number you like to see there. That's a reason why they brought him in from FAU. But Joe Royer continues to be a key elite tight end prospect. Obviously, you heard it throughout the broadcast, all throughout the game, about how teams are really honed in and worried about what Joe Royer can do because he can do so many things well. He can block in the pass game. He can block in the run game. He can split out wide. He has the athletic ability to go upfield and make a move. Great hands for somebody his size. And I mean, Russ, it showed on Saturday. 8 catches on 10 targets, 84 yards, which ties a career high. He led the team in receptions and yards. But, Russ, you look down at the stats, 40 yards after the catch for Joe Royer. That is something that has been huge for Cincinnati as well. And I thought, obviously, you look down, Xavier Henderson only getting the 2 targets. UCF did a great job taking him away out of this picture and played a lot of man coverage on him. But overall, when Henderson was getting covered, it was great to see Sorsby look to guys like Tony Johnson, Joe Royer. Jamoy Mays saw 11 targets as well, only hauled in 4 of them. But overall, they're trying to get these other guys going that will allow things to free up for guys like Xavier Henderson and find ways to get Corey Kiner going as well. But you look at the offense, Russ, 338 total yards, obviously only 97 on the ground. That's a number Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield would probably like to have closer to like the 150 range since they are a coaching staff that loves to run the ball. But you go 9 of 16 on third downs. I think that's a great number. Obviously, I think you can get a little bit better there. 70 total plays of offense. They converted their only 4th down opportunity. Brendan Sorsby averaged nearly 10 yards of completion. But overall, this was a game where it was kind of shaky on the offensive side of the ball, but they left a lot of points there on the board as well. Nathan Hawks missed another field goal. I believe he missed 2, right?
Yeah, I think he did miss 2 in this one.
So overall, there was a game where points were left on the board. No, he only
3. He missed 2 or 3. Yeah.
Yeah, he missed one field goal. So you're leaving points on the board there. But overall, great to get that road win. But now they got to lock back in for a very tough Arizona State team.
And he did miss a PAT as well, missed a point after attempt.
Yep,
so
so
had 2 missed kicks in the day. So
Yep.
That's got to get cleaned up special teams wise. He was as bad kicking the ball as Mason Fletcher was punting the ball. So that was a good wash there in terms of the special teams not necessarily hurting UC at all and honestly being a positive in the end. And a great highlight there, Neil, of the 2 guys that powered this offense largely. It was Joe Royer and Tony Johnson. 16 catches, over 160 total yards, and 1 touchdown on 20 targets. That's exactly what they needed. They needed basically nearly every one of those catches, and they needed that standout performance from Tony Johnson, his best performance as a Bearcat. And it showed in the grades, Neil. When you look at the PFF grades, nobody did as good a job as Tony Johnson. It was not close. 77.1 overall, paced the entire unit. Next closest was Joe Royer at 70.9 overall. Philip Wilder had a nice day at third best rating, 68 overall in this one. Barry Jackson had a nice day in his limited snaps, 67.4 rating. And Luke Kandra continues to crank out 60 plus grades consistently. He rarely, if ever, has had a bad game at UC with a 67.2 overall rating on the day. Neil, the offense did enough. I think they will be the first to say they did not execute enough in the run game, like to their liking. They did have 110 yards on the ground after you adjust for sacks, but still just 3.7 yards per carry. That's got to get cleaned up. Although it is tough when you're facing a defense on the ground of the caliber of UCF. Very good defensively on the ground, not good through the air. And that was a little bit of a head scratching part, especially in the first half, where it just felt like one of those days where Brendan Sorsby's accuracy wasn't quite where it's been, hitting the ceiling it's hit throughout this season. We'll see if we can get that fixed for the Arizona State matchup. But all in all, shout out to Joe Royer, shout out to Tony Johnson. Those guys powered a much needed every bit of yardage out of this offense to get to 19 points and ultimately stave off any comeback from the UCF Knights, a series that's now tied all time at 5-5 overall, with the next matchup coming right back here in 2025 to see who can break the tie in the next iteration. We'll take a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz and get to the KenPom rankings, because we have not had the AP poll file in during this recording, so we will not be able to react to it until Thursday. Excited for that, though. Excited for basketball. It is quickly approaching. Coming up on Bearcat Blitz, presented by Bet Online. Neil, basketball season, you can just feel it when it's getting close. The highs are dipping into the high 50s, low 60s. The leaves are changing and starting to fall, and the rankings are starting to funnel out for Cincinnati basketball. We just had KenPom drop theirs. Ken Pomeroy drop his rankings entering the week of October 14th here, and some interesting ones to parse through. Go ahead and touch on these real quick. Cincinnati sitting at 17th overall on KenPom, Neil, and I think pretty much right where I'd probably peg them going into the year. 25th on offense with a 110.1 offensive rating, according to KenPom, and 13th nationally on defense. I saw that Evan Miyakawa actually had Cincinnati's defense ranked in the top 10 overall on his ranking. I'll go ahead and pull that up while you react to KenPom. We're going to get the AP poll within a few hours of us wrapping up this recording right now. I'm projecting, Neil, somewhere in the 20s, 22nd overall is my overall projection. Where do you think they land in the AP poll? People will have that, probably have access to that by the time they're able to hear this, and then your reaction to them being 17th on KenPom's preseason ratings.
Yeah, first off, when the AP polls come out later this afternoon is what we were thinking early this morning, later this afternoon. I expect the Bearcats to probably be within the 20 to 25 range. I know a lot of people are expecting them to be a little bit higher, but overall, I expect them to be right there within the 20 to the 25 range, with Xavier closely in front of them or behind them, obviously, depending on how voters and everything goes. But Russ, overall, the KenPom ratings, that's huge for Cincinnati. To be ranked 17th is huge, because you look at who's ranked above them: Houston, Duke, Auburn, Bama, UConn, Kansas, Iowa State, Arizona. You look down within the Big 12.
The top national title contenders. That's who's ranked above them.
Right. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 Big 12 schools ahead of Cincinnati in the KenPom rating. So that just in itself says a lot about not only the Big 12, but the caliber of basketball played within the Big 12. And there's a reason why it is the best conference in America. But for Cincinnati to be up there, ranked ahead of Texas, ahead of BYU, Marquette, Illinois, Clemson, Arkansas, the list goes on and on. But to see that number, if I'm Wes Miller, I'm pretty happy to be sitting at number 17 in the first KenPom rankings. That's for sure.
Right. And it gives you some kind of some breathing room to spark some disrespect in the fellas a little bit. Hey, they only think you guys are 17th with some of the, I would love to see this on KenPom. I'm going to dive into that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, of how would they rank compared to other teams nationally in returning talent overall. It's pretty much right where they're gauged across all the national metrics. Neil, you got Evan Mayakawa's ranking, just pulled that up, 15th nationally. ESPN's ranking 19th nationally going into the season by Jeff Borzello. So they're hovering in that 15 to 25 range right now, and that's exactly where I think they should be entering the season. And I think they will end up being a top 12 team nationally by the end of the season. They will enter the tournament, in my opinion, ranked among the top 12 in the AP poll, and they will be a true dark horse contender to win the national title should this roster stay together and stay healthy. It's going to be a lot of fun. And real quick before we go, Neil, 6th best team in the Big 12 coaches poll. That matches the KenPom rankings, right? Essentially, the KenPom, they have like 6 teams ahead of them, so they would be ranked 7th in KenPom among Big 12 teams. So there you go. Everybody pretty much aligned with what Cincinnati's done, how they've elevated the program over the first 3 years under Wes Miller and this past offseason under him. The most anticipated season this decade and maybe in the past 10 years for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball, and widely expected to be ranked in the AP poll for the first time since the final AP poll of the 2018-2019 season. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online, coming back at you on Thursday with reaction to those rankings, ranked or not, and a full look at Arizona State in what should be another tightly contested, fun contest at Nippert Stadium. He's Neil Meyer. I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network.
6, Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown. As back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the sideline. Foot race. House call. Touchdown. 79 yards. Big one in the Peach Bowl. This is a big one too. And it's going to go all the way to the